इस वक्त वित्त मंत्री अरुण जेटली बोल रहे हैं, आइए आपको सीधे वहीं ले चलते हैं।
The original dates were 17th, 18th and 19th October. The dates now will be 18th, 19th and 20th of October. So it's been just pushed by one day. One of the obviously the first item has to be the approval of the minutes of the last meeting. With regard to one item recorded in the minutes, with regard to the service tax assessments in the new dispensation, there was a long discussion on the interpretation of the decision taken in the last meeting, and that discussion consumed quite a lot of the timing today. That discussion was inconclusive, and therefore it will continue in the next meeting on the 18th. On the regular items of agenda, there were two items on the agenda. One was with regard to the draft GST rules. Now these rules are with regard to registration for the purposes of the GST, rules for payment, rules for returns, rules for refunds, and rules for invoices, debit and credit notes. Now from registration, payment of tax, distribution of tax, how that is to be done. Why I call them draft rules? Because these are rules which will be notified once the act is passed. So in anticipation of the GST Act, all the legislations, these will be rules which are framed under those legislations. So once the act is passed by the parliament or by the state legislature, as the case may be, we want the draft rules to be ready in anticipation so that the rules can be notified immediately. Now these set of rules have been prepared by the technical experts, that's the officers assisting us. These 5 sets of rules were taken up for consideration, and all the 5 sets of rules have been approved. So we are in that sense in a state of readiness with subordinate legislation once the act itself is approved. The second major item on the agenda today was the treatment of the existing tax incentives by the central and the state governments. Now the central government has given certain exemptions as far as those 11 states are concerned, Northeast and the hill states. These are with regard to the levy of central excise. Similarly, when states incentivized industries to invest in their states, they've held out a series of incentives and exemptions, and some exemptions from certain taxation laws. Now, it's quite possible that some of the exemptions may get phased out, but for the exemptions which may remain, how will these exemptions fit into the GST system? So the meeting, the council took up for discussion the management of these exemptions. And it was agreed that there would be a levy of tax under the GST system on all exempted entities. Once the tax is levied, the central government or the state government which gets that tax would then reimburse from the budget that quantum of tax back to the exempted entity. So it will be like a So you'll have the GST system in operation where everybody has to pay the tax. But if you are an exempted entity and the center or the state decides to continue that exempted entity, then they would be entitled to that amount being given back to them. Now the details of this in each case would be worked out, which exempted entities would remain, which would not remain, would also be worked out by the central and the state governments. As far as the center is concerned, it's predominantly the northeast and the hill states. And as far as the states are concerned, these are specific industries. These could be also some individual generalized items. That depends from every state to state. So the states will have to take a call as to which are the exempted entities, because they would then get the tax and then reimburse the tax back to those entities. So with these, we have completed 4 items completely last time, 2 items completely today. 1 item, the 5th item last time, we've substantially discussed it, except that one issue which remains outstanding. And today there is that interpretation of the service tax division of authority between the center and the states. There is some discussion on this which is inconclusive. Now after this, with these 2 items remaining, of course the rates would be the big item to be discussed in the next meeting, and thereafter we'll go to the draft of the 3 GST.